The following segment is sponsored by Gilman and Bedigian.
7:45. Election Day is tomorrow, and one of the issues voters will weigh in on is question 1, the renaming of Maryland's highest courts. Maryland's Court of Appeals would become the Supreme Court of Maryland, and the Court of Special Appeals would become the Appellate Court of Maryland. So what does this mean for you? Attorney Charles Gilman with Gilman and Bedigian joins us this morning. Good morning, Charles.
Good morning, Patrice. How are you?
I'm doing well. All right. So in addition to the names of the courts changing, the judges of the Supreme Court would then be called justices. Why do we need a name change?
I don't think we do, but apparently some people believe this brings us in line with the vast majority of other states where their highest level court, their Supreme Court, is called the Supreme Court. It brings us in line with the federal system, which we're all familiar with, where you have the Supreme Court, and just below it you have the Circuit Court, which are called the Courts of Appeals. So it'll bring us in line with the federal system, and like I said, the vast majority of other states. It'll give our judges on those two-level courts a new name. They'll be justices.
Okay. Was this confusing before for some people, the way we have our courts named versus how others do it?
You know, to a lot of lay people, I suppose it is.
Okay.
I've been trained to know that the Court of Special Appeals is the first level and the Court of Appeals is the second.
That does sound backwards.
Correct. I've been working with it for 22 years now.
Right.
So to me, the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals would be more confusing. But that's just me.
So what voters are going to want to know, would the courts function differently than they do now? What does the change mean for them?
You know, for them, it doesn't mean anything. I guess it means if they're from another state and they're used to having the Court of Appeals being the highest level court, that Maryland will now be in line with that system where it'll be called the Supreme Court. This is actually, I thought, you know, as a lawyer, I get a lot of questions all the time about issues on the ballot. And I got more questions about this than I have about cannabis or anything else that's ever been on the ballot. So I thought it was kind of odd that people were paying this much attention to it, because I think everybody involved is trying to make it clear that there's no change in the way the system will function. It's literally a name change.
And I think so that might be the reason, because when I looked at it, I was like, well, why? Why do we need to just change the name? And not only that, to make the changes, the Maryland legislature had to pass a bill to amend the Constitution. So we're saying that this name change is important enough to amend the state constitution.
Right. A change like this does require an amendment of the state constitution. So yes, it has to be voted on. And I suppose it creates a lot of confusion out there in the public, although a lot of the clients I deal with who are in business or industry, I guess because they're here, they understand the system and they know what it means. But maybe there's a lot of lay people out there that just don't, and this will make it easier.
And that makes sense. So now voters know. Thank you, Charles.
Thanks, Patrice.